thank you so much for joining me today to talk about your research area. This is a Research Wales Innovation funded project working with Swansea Council and other third sectors coming together to help create a landmark site for heritage, learning, innovation and community engagement. Welcome, David Turner. What is heritage-led generation?
Well, it's about how history and heritage can be used to underpin a programme of restoration and development. It's about sort of instilling a sense of place in by better understanding the history of a particular area and then using that to inspire the future development, whether that's in terms of repurposing historical buildings or in terms of thinking about the identity of a particular place and how that might feed into how that place is branded.
That's brilliant. And I know a lot of your work is working with the Harvard Morva Copper Works. Has anything been done before you guys have started this work, or are you the first ones to really get something working here?
Well, Swansea University's involvement with Harvard Morva Copper Works began around about 2010. And at that time, it was quite a derelict site. It's just close to the Park and Ride and the Liberty Stadium in the east side of Swansea. And some of the buildings were in use. The museum has a store there in one of the old buildings, but a lot of the remains of buildings were in quite a dilapidated state. And so my colleague, Professor Hugh Bowen, managed to get some funding to start thinking about the heritage of that particular site and how we might engage the public in that. And from that, in the history department, we've been doing some important research on the global history of Welsh copper led by Professor Louise Miskell. And that research has, over time, started to inform the way in which the council is viewing the site and its programme of heritage-led regeneration.
Brilliant. And what is the link with preserving the Harvard Copper Works to helping preserve Swansea's heritage?
Well, the copper works were really important employers of people in Swansea from the 18th century. In fact, it goes back a long way up until the 1960s, and so it's a really big part of Swansea's industrial history, but it's also something which links Swansea to the rest of the world. So there wasn't any copper here in Swansea, but there's loads of coal nearby, and so copper was imported into the port of Swansea, and where it was smelted, made into various products, and those products were then exported across the world. So it's a local history with global dimensions.
That's brilliant. And I know a lot of your work has involved Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3. Why is it important to involve this group in your research as well?
Well, it's really important to engage children at an early age in understanding their local history, and particularly been working with schools in the area close to the Copperworks site, because those children didn't really have much idea about what these buildings were really, or what their importance was. They don't look particularly exciting, or but they've got this really interesting history, and so we've been able to engage with those schools and help those children to learn about the past and to connect with the places that they come from.
That's brilliant. And I know your project began in autumn 2020, and I'm going to say it, lockdown. How difficult was that to overcome?
Well, it was about the worst time possible to start a big project, which is all about public engagement. It's because we just couldn't get out and about to do things on site, or get into schools to work with those children. So it was a real challenge to begin a project under those circumstances, but we were able to use online communication like everyone else learnt to do at that time, and we're able to do some important groundwork as well. So one of the early parts of the project involved commissioning a report to survey the heritage landscape in Wales, and how we could fit into that, and how we could better work with the rest of the heritage sector, with government and other bodies.
Brilliant. I know you've achieved, some of your achievements have been making a primary school film with some MA students as well, and the children actually narrated that film. That's an incredible achievement and really shows how you're bringing in that engagement with schools. How was that?
Yeah, that's one of the parts of the project I'm most proud of. And this was an initiative led by my colleague Tracy Evans. So she worked with the primary schools that I mentioned earlier, and about sort of about helping them to understand the history of Welsh copper, particularly this global history, because these are quite diverse communities. And we were able to bring in one of our MA students. So on our MA in Public History and Heritage, we have a work placement module. And so one of those students came on board with the project. She helped to develop the script for the film. It was an animated film, and the film was narrated by two young people from those schools. And it's and that short film and the accompanying pack of educational resources is quite unique, really.
It's definitely unique. It's incredible work. And also, your research shows the importance of Welsh copper globally. And isn't that great to be able to show off how important Welsh copper is globally?
That's right. Yeah. So so Louise Miskell's research with her colleague Chris Evans at the University of South Wales, they published a really important book a couple of years ago on the global history of Swansea copper.
Yeah.
I think Chris calls the 19th century the Swansea moment in world history, which is something I really love. And it's not, it's about kind of it's about showing how that history is something which is very local, which is so involves sort of lots of people from the local area working in an industry, which help to create a sense of identity for themselves and for Swansea, but something which has this huge global reach, and that's a really important thing in the new curriculum for Wales. So about sort of helping young people to understand the histories of the places they came from, but also how that connects them to the global community. And so Swansea Copper is a fantastic way of exploring that kind of a connection between the local and the global.
That's brilliant. And you've been able to work with schools beyond Swansea, and so this just proves exactly how you've been able to help with more global collaborators. So after working with the schools in Swansea, we've also worked with schools in Neath, Port Talbot, which is sort of we're getting global.
We're getting global, aren't we?
Surely.
Neath, that's what I feel when I get to Neath, and it's and so we've been working with schools that with children at comprehensive school, Ysgol Bay Baglan. And there we've been looking at the history and heritage of the steel industry, which is really important, obviously, to Port Talbot. And there we've we've been working across the curriculum, and there's a really interesting part of that project is it's not just about looking at the history of steel making, but also kind of bringing in other subjects as well, so, STEM subjects. And that's another really interesting aspect of the new curriculum in Wales, how it's encouraging students to think across disciplines. And I think that's the future, really, to try not to think in narrow terms, but to kind of to look at ways in which all our disciplines can speak to each other and provide a really enriching educational experience.
Definitely. And how can you bring that back into the classroom as well?
Well, we can bring that into the classroom through the kind of resources that I've been talking about. We've also been thinking about ways in which we can upskill young people. So not just sort of looking at this in kind of academic terms, but also in terms of practical skills development. And so at the Craig Gladys site in Neath, Port Talbot, my colleague Alex Langlands has been doing some work with students from further education college around heritage construction and conservation, and getting them out on site to apply some of those building skills in a practical context.
That's brilliant. And congratulations on your new research centre, CHART. So CHART helps bring that back into the community. What does CHART stand for, and what does that mean as part of this project to be able to form that centre?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the great things about this Research Wales Innovation Funded project is that we're able to establish this research centre, which brings together the heritage work being done across the university. And one thing we discovered is how much interesting heritage work is going on, not just in the Department of History, Heritage and Classics, which is where you'd expect it to be found, but also we've got colleagues in economics, in tourism, in computer science, business, who are really interested in this area as well and doing some relevant work. So CHART, which stands for the Centre for Heritage Research and Training, is a way of bringing that community of academics together. It's a way of connecting with our students, particularly those on the Masters in Public History and Heritage, some of whom sit on the CHART's steering group, and it's a way of connecting with wider community. So so CHART is an organisation that communities can contact. So people in the community want to do a heritage project, need a bit of advice, need some academic support on that. They can get in touch with us, and we've been providing some support for those local community groups.
That's brilliant work. And I know a lot of your work has been kind of structured into school outcomes as well. So what kind of school-focused activities have you done?
Well, I've mentioned a few of them so far, like the film and the work on steel at Bay Baglan. This year in the project, we've been helping Penavrow Primary School in Dunvant, which is 100 years old. Wow. This year, so very special year for that school. And they approached us just before the start of the school year to ask for some help in developing a project with their pupils to kind of research the school's history and celebrate the school over the past 100 years. So CHART's been working with a filmmaker and a graffiti artist who's been creating a mural with some of the children. And again, we've been able to involve our students in this as well. One of our students, Eleanor Holland, who has been there on a work placement this term. She's an undergraduate student, and she's been doing some work in the archives, trying to find some interesting stories that then she can take back to the children in the classroom and engage them with those fascinating histories of not just of the school but also of the village that it's part of.
And have you received any feedback from pupils and teachers so far on this?
The feedback's been really positive. So going back to the film we made, one of the teachers commented that that this makes history real. You know, it's not just something that you read about in books, and it can be a challenge sometimes to engage people in thinking about history, but that sort of hands-on practical experience of of working with experts. So the children went off to the Havermorfa site to meet Alex, the archaeologist, Alex Langlands, and learn from him about what an archaeologist does and how an archaeologist would would work in a site like that. It really brings history home for them. It makes it real, makes it tangible, and that school's resource now is used by I think 15 schools in Swansea. I think it's reaching 500 people. So it's great that we've created something which will be a lasting legacy of the project.
Definitely. Congratulations on that success. And you've also been helping homeless charities, which is an amazing opportunity for their skill development. And this is including Wallick, Wales's leading homeless charity, helping more than 7,000 people a year. So how have the outcomes of this partnership really helped to dive into that wider community value from this?
Yeah, so we've been working with the WALIC. We've also been working with Crisis, another important homeless charity.
Yeah.
And some of their volunteers have been working down at the Copperworks site. They've been involved in doing some hands-on working, sort of helping to clear and maintain parts of the site. They've also been doing some art and photography projects around there as well, and it's just great to be able to kind of get people out into that kind of environment and use it as something which can inspire creativity.
Definitely. And have you been working with something called the Rich History Group in Port Talbot? What does this involve?
Yeah, so this is an example of a local community group who got in touch with CHART for some help in putting together a National Heritage Lottery Fund application. So this is to create some landscape heritage trails, and so yeah, we were able to give them some advice and support, and they were successful in getting an award from the Heritage Lottery Fund to take that further.
That's brilliant. And I know you've been working as well closely with Neath Port Talbot Council, and you've been clearing different sites there. And how supportive has your team been in helping you clear these sites?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a team effort all the way, and you know, I can't do this interview without thanking other members of the team. I've mentioned Tracy Evans and Alex Langlands, who've been absolutely instrumental in these community projects. Really important work being done as well by other team members, Hilary Orange, Sarah May and May Musier, who've also all been involved in various aspects of community engagement. So yeah, as the project's gone on, we haven't sort of neglected Swansea, but we've moved further east to Neath Port Talbot, where the council is interested in working with us. And one of the places we've been working at is Craig Galadus Country Park, and so we were approached by the heritage officer there to come down and visit and see what we could do, and so that's where, as I said, Alex Langlands has been doing some interesting work in kind of in maintaining the site and bringing in FE students and also people from homeless groups as well to do some hands-on work at that particular location.
That's brilliant. And I know that one of the government policies is to have research surrounding culture and heritage. How does your project really help support this government policy?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, it's about sort of particularly about supporting the school curriculum, and it's about bringing together higher education and further education, and it's also about sort of helping to think about how heritage in Wales more generally can be part of the future. So so I'm on a steering group with Welsh Government that's looking at cultural strategy at the moment, and so it's interesting to kind of to think about heritage within that broader area of culture in Wales, and how this can be preserved and developed for future audiences.
And I love how this Research Wales Innovation Funded project really emphasises the importance on partnerships, collaborations. How important has your partnerships been to help with this project?
They've been so important, and there's so many of them. I mean, I could talk about them all day, but they've really, but our partners have been fantastic, and we've done some really interesting work with them. I've mentioned quite a few of them already in terms of the schools, but we've also been working with young people's mental health charities. So Alex Langlands had a project funded by the Royal Society of Chemistry, and which was to look at the chemical processes involved in making copper, and in particular, it looked at it focused on the little crucibles which are used to smelt copper, and in the archaeological work that's been going on at Abertawe, quite a lot of these have been dug up and rediscovered. And so part of this project, which is working with Platform, with Crisis, and with Esther Lay, who's an artist, was about getting people to make their own copper crucibles, and they made some really beautiful examples of these, and they were put on display in the National Waterfront Museum. And I think over 700 people went to see those little crucibles that people had made. And part of that project was done during lockdown, part of it was done by Zoom, and it's about connecting people who were feeling isolated at that time, and then when it was safe for people to come together, then they're able to come and do this artistic project as well. So I think that really captures the kind of the essence of what we're trying to do in this project. It's about thinking about the heritage of the area. It's about involving diverse communities and thinking about that heritage, and it's also about connecting that heritage to other areas like science and technology, and thinking in that kind of multidisciplinary way. And that, that's just one example I could talk about, but I think it's a really good one, and
definitely,
it's one I think we can be really proud of.
Definitely. And what are the next steps of the project? Because we know it doesn't end here. What can we expect to see in the future?
Well, we've been able to lay some foundations using the Research Wales Innovation funding that we've been so lucky to have over the last 3 years, and that's going to lead to new projects. So there's two I'd like to mention. One, again, staying in Port Talbot, we've been involved in conversations with people working on the restoration of Margam Castle, which is an incredible building just outside of Port Talbot, and it's on this big country estate. It's got 1,000 years of history there, so it's a kind of medieval history, but it goes up to sort of a history of industrialization and so on. So it's such a remarkable place. The building itself is not in a good state of repair, unfortunately. It was very badly damaged by fire, and so Port Talbot Council are looking at trying to bring in funding to try and bring it back to kind of a way that it could be used by the public, and so one of the things we've been doing, this is a project led by my colleague Hilary Orange, is looking at how we can use virtual reality to recreate what the house sort of looked like in its Victorian heyday. So we are lucky that there are a few photographs of some of the rooms surviving. And then there are archival resources in the National Library of Wales that could be used to start to think about what was in those rooms and how it might have looked, and then to create this sort of state-of-the-art kind of way of sort of going back in time and sort of seeing what it would have looked like. So that's a great way of sort of managing to engage people in the sort of in the history of that building, even though at the moment it can't be restored to that kind of sort of to how it was at that time. But VR offers a way of getting around that problem. The other project we've recently become involved with, in collaboration with a heritage consultancy group called Cultural Associates Oxford, is working with the Cyfarthfa Foundation, who are a group based in Merthyr Tydfil. And Cyfarthfa Castle is something rather similar, I suppose, to Margam Castle, in that it's a former residence of industrialists, a very grand building, but again in quite a in need of some TLC, to put it mildly, and so the Cyfarthfa Foundation have commissioned some work which CHART's involved in about sort of thinking about the potential future uses of that site with a view to applying for funding to try and sort of restore that wonderful building. And so CHART's involvement there, which I'm leading with alongside May Musier, is about we're going to run a workshop in Merthyr on the 12th of July, which brings together local history groups, like members of the community, council, schools, and artists to think about how we tell the story of Merthyr's past, or the multiple stories of Merthyr's past, and in particular, think about who's missing from those stories. So that question of diversity that we were talking about a moment ago, it's really, really important. For me, I'm by training, I'm a historian of disability, and so kind of bringing those diverse histories into the heritage interpretation of Cyfarthfa and the other places that we've been working with is really important. So I think we've got a lot to get on with. And
what a valuable research project that you're working on. Thank you so much for working on this, because it's obviously contributing to not just the, like we said, internal partnerships that you think of, but also the wider community, and bringing in so much inspiration there. So thank you. And if we want to find out more about your project and keep up to date, how do we do this?
Well, the best way is through the CHART website, and there you can find our contact details. If you want to get in touch with us, if you want to partner with us on something, then we'd really love to hear from you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for chatting with me today, David, and thank you everyone for listening.
Thanks very much.